The sound of something breaking a glass, maybe a picture frame, echoed through the empty penthouse, but Maddie Turner didn't even look back. She was too busy fighting the sharp, tearing pain rolling through her abdomen. Her hand slid across the marble countertop, searching for support, but her legs buckled anyway. Her water had just broken. 35 weeks. Too early. Too dangerous. Too alone. Brandon? She whispered into the cold air, though she knew he wasn't there. Her husband was miles away, probably half drunk on champagne, wrapped around his mistress in some luxury hotel suite where guilt couldn't reach him. She reached for her iPhone with trembling fingers. 1 call. 2 calls. 5. Straight to voicemail. Another contraction hit, folding her forward until her forehead touched the kitchen island. The penthouse lights glowed warm and golden behind her, like a perfect life staged for a magazine cover, except tonight, she wasn't part of that picture. She was just a pregnant woman, bleeding through love and loyalty, holding a belly that carried 2 lives depending on her. She forced herself upright. "You have to move, Maddie. Move." The building's doorman rushed to her when he saw her stumble into the lobby, sweat-soaked and ghost-pale. "Miss Turner, should I call your husband?" Her throat closed. She managed a tiny shake of her head. "No, just call a car." But the world around her blurred, the marble floor tilting like a sinking ship. Her knees gave out. Panic surged. She wasn't ready, not like this. Not abandoned in a designer lobby while the father of her children was wrapped around another woman. The doorman grabbed her shoulders. "Ma'am, stay with me." But she was slipping fast. Somewhere above the ringing in her ears, she heard him answer the phone, her phone. "I'm sorry, sir." She collapsed. "Yes, we're calling an ambulance." Brandon finally called back. Of course he did. When it was too late, the ambulance sirens wailed through Manhattan's night, reflecting off glass towers like an emergency heartbeat. Maddie fought consciousness, images flashing. Brandon's smile when they first met. His cold eyes the night he told her she was too emotional during pregnancy. The unsigned divorce papers he'd pushed across the table just days ago. Another contraction ripped through her. Harder, deeper. 2 babies. 2 heartbeats. And she was losing control. Her vision tunneled to black until she saw a face she did not expect leaning over her stretcher as they rushed her through the ER doors. Not her husband. Not her family. It was Ethan Caldwell, Brandon's rival. Brandon's worst nightmare. The man who had every reason to walk past her and yet didn't. He gripped her hand firmly. "Maddie, I'm here. I've got you. Stay with me." Her lips trembled. "Ethan." "Why?" His eyes darkened. "Because someone should have been here. And he sure as hell wasn't." And in that moment, before the world went dark, Maddie understood tonight was only the beginning. Something far bigger, far darker, was about to break open. Before the ambulance doors slammed shut, before the cameras and headlines, before Ethan Caldwell stepped into her story, there was a time when Madeline Turner believed she had the perfect marriage. But perfection, she would later learn, can be the most dangerous illusion of all. 3 years earlier, Maddie and Brandon Reeves stood on the balcony of their Upper East Side apartment, sipping coffee from matching white mugs. She remembered the way he wrapped his arm around her waist, pointing at the Manhattan skyline like it was a kingdom he intended to conquer. "We're going to build something legendary," he told her. "You and me." He meant Helix Gene, the company he founded. But Maddie, naive and hopeful, thought he meant them. In those days, she would come home from work at MedExxon Diagnostics, tired but grateful. She cooked dinner, reviewed his business pitches, rewrote his investor decks on her MacBook Pro, and took notes during his calls because he said she summarized better than any assistant. She supported him, believed in him, carried him. What she didn't know was that the man she fought for would later weaponize every secret insecurity she had. The first crack appeared when she told him she wanted children. He didn't say no. He didn't say yes. He just smiled and said, "Let's wait until the company grows." But the company grew. And so did his ego. Then grew his distance. His temper. His late nights. His lies. At first, the excuses were small. Board meeting ran long. Client dinner. Traffic. Then they became insults dressed as logic. "Stop overreacting. You're imagining things. You're too emotional." 1. The night Maddie found the receipt from the Ritz-Carlton, 2 glasses of champagne, One luxury suite was the night her reality cracked in half. She stood in their walk-in closet holding his shirt, inhaling a trace of perfume she didn't recognize. She remembered asking, quietly, trembling, "Who were you with?" And Brandon, not even looking up from his phone, said, "Don't start. You'll stress yourself out." That single sentence was the beginning of the end. But the real breaking point came the night she told him she was pregnant with twins. She'd imagined him smiling, lifting her off the ground, celebrating the future they'd once dreamed of. Instead, he stared at her like she'd handed him a burden. "Twins," he repeated, voice flat. "Do you know how this timing affects the IPO?" She laughed nervously. "Brandon, there are babies." He didn't touch her belly. He didn't hug her. He didn't say a single loving thing. All he said was, "We'll manage. Just don't let it interfere with your work." And from that moment on, nothing was the same. His nights away increased. His patience evaporated. He accused her of milking pregnancy. He monitored her spending. He told his mother Maddie was getting lazy. Then the cruelest twist. 6 months in, when she was throwing up every morning, swollen, exhausted, he slid a stack of legal documents across the dining table. "Sign these," he said, "just to simplify our finances before the IPO." It was a revised marital agreement, one that removed her from any ownership in Helix Gene. She stared at him in disbelief. "You're taking everything," he shrugged. "You didn't really earn it." Her heart broke, but she didn't sign. That night was also the first time she saw the name Chloe Drayton on his phone. Only later would Maddie learn that Chloe wasn't just a mistress. She was the match Brandon used to burn down everything they'd built. And now, as she lay unconscious in the hospital with 2 babies fighting to survive, the truth Maddie had refused to see finally completed itself. Her marriage hadn't failed the night Brandon abandoned her. It had failed long before she just hadn't realized she was already bleeding. And while Maddie fought for breath in the ER, Brandon was about to make the one mistake that would destroy him forever. Bright hospital lights blurred into streaks of white as paramedics pushed Madeline Turner through the sliding doors of Mount Sinai. Alarms beeped. Voices overlapped. The sharp smell of disinfectant mixed with something metallic fear. Her body felt foreign, like it had been hijacked by pain. Every contraction hit like a tidal wave, dragging her further underwater. She clutched the blanket beneath her, eyes fluttering open just long enough to take in the chaos around her. BP dropping. Get OB on the phone now. She's 35 weeks with twins move." Through the haze, Maddie searched for one face. Not Brandon. She had given up hoping for him long before tonight. The man she searched for, the one who had shocked her to her core, was Ethan Caldwell. The rival CEO. The man Brandon hated. The man Brandon feared. Ethan had followed the ambulance in his own car, abandoning a Wall Street board dinner the second Nora Whitfield told him Maddie collapsed. Now he stood at the foot of the ER bed, jaw clenched, suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked nothing like the cold, untouchable corporate legend she'd seen on television. Tonight, he looked human, worried, determined. "Stay with me, Maddie," he said, leaning closer. "You're going to be fine." Her lips trembled. "Why? Why are you here?" Ethan swallowed. "Because you deserved someone to show up." 1. A tear slipped from the corner of her eye, whether from pain or relief, she couldn't tell. Her world spun violently again, the floor falling away beneath her as another contraction seized her body. She screamed, the sound cracked, raw, terrified. A nurse squeezed her shoulder. "Baby A is in distress. We need to move her to labor 3, let's go." As they wheeled her down the corridor, Ethan walked beside the stretcher, refusing to leave. Nurses shouted around him, but he didn't move. He wasn't family. He wasn't her husband. He wasn't even her friend. But he stayed. In the labor room, machines hummed around her heart monitors, fetal trackers, oxygen lines. Maddie blinked through the pain and saw Ethan pacing, hands in his hair, face tight with worry. "Where's OB?" a nurse snapped. "She's 8 centimeters, this is happening now." A different nurse approached Ethan. "Sir, are you the father?" He froze. His eyes flicked to Maddie, sweat, soaked, terrified, clutching the rails of the bed. "No," he said quietly. "But I'm not leaving." The nurse nodded once, surprisingly soft. "Then stand by her. She'll need someone." Ethan moved to Maddie's side. taking her shaking hand in his. His grip was steady, warm. "You're not alone," he whispered. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But a dark thought cut through the agony. What if she didn't make it? What if the babies didn't? What if this was how her story ended, abandoned, betrayed, broken? Another contraction crashed over her, ripping a scream from her throat. The fetal monitor spiked. Someone cursed. Someone shouted for backup. "Baby A is losing heart rate, prep for emergency delivery." Maddie sobbed. "Please don't let anything happen to them." Ethan's voice cracked for the first time. "Maddie, look at me. I won't let anything happen to you or your children. I swear to you." But the room erupted again. Alarms. Running footsteps. The metallic click of surgical instruments. And then, "Where the hell is the father?" a doctor barked. "We need consent for an emergency C-section." Ethan looked at Maddie, fear and fury warring in his expression. Maddie gasped through a contraction, eyes wide with realization. Brandon still hadn't shown up. And no one in that room knew the one secret that could change everything. Maddie's signature wasn't needed. Brandon's was, and he was nowhere to be found. The labor room doors flew open just as a surge of panic rippled through the medical team. A doctor barked orders, nurses scrambled for supplies, and the fetal monitor screamed warnings that pierced the air like sirens. Madeline Turner lay trembling on the bed, teeth clenched against the tidal wave of pain ripping through her body. She heard every alarm, every urgent whisper, and yet somehow felt miles away from all of it. Her babies were in danger. She was slipping, and the man who vowed to love her was still nowhere in sight. Ethan Caldwell stood frozen for a moment, taking everything in the chaos, the fear, the exhaustion on Maddie's face. But then something shifted in him. His expression hardened, his shoulders squared. The cool, measured CEO vanished, replaced by a man who refused to let her fight alone. "What do you need?" Ethan asked sharply, stepping toward the nearest nurse. She hesitated. "Sir, unless you're family." "I'm here," he said firmly. "And she's not going through this without someone beside her." Another contraction struck Maddie, pulling a broken cry from her. Ethan moved fast, grabbing her hand, brushing damp hair off her forehead as she gasped for air. "I can't," she whimpered. "I can't do this. I'm scared, Ethan." He tightened his grip. "You're the strongest woman I've ever known. You can do this. And I'm not leaving. Not for a second." A nurse rushed between them, heart rate dropping again. "Baby A isn't tolerating the contractions. We need consent for an emergency C-section now." "Where is the father?" another doctor demanded. The air turned thick, suffocating. "He isn't here," Ethan said, jaw clenched. "And he won't be." The doctor shot him a deadpan look. "Then we need the mother's signature. She's conscious enough." "Lad." Maddie's eyes fluttered open, her hand trembling as a clipboard was placed near her fingertips. But before she could sign, her vision blurred, her chest tightened, and everything spun violently. "BP dropping. She's crashing. Get anesthesia on standby." "She's going unresponsive." Ethan's calm shattered. "Maddie. Maddie, stay with me." Her lips moved faintly. "Ethan. Promise me." He leaned closer, heart pounding. "Anything. Don't let him take them." The room exploded into motion. Nurses pushed Ethan aside gently but firmly as they prepared to rush her into surgery. Panic ripped through him, raw, unfamiliar, terrifying. He had watched deals fall apart, seen markets crash, endured hostile takeovers. Nothing compared to this. Nothing compared to the fear of losing her. The anesthesiologist appeared, mask already in hand. "We're losing time. Prep the oar." They began pushing Maddie toward the double doors, her body limp, the fetal monitor screaming with every step. Ethan followed until a nurse blocked his path with an apologetic shake of her head. "I'm sorry, sir. You can't go past this point." Ethan's chest constricted. "But she won't have anyone. She'll have us," the nurse said softly. "And right now, you need to pray we're fast enough." He watched helplessly as the doors swung closed behind her, leaving him alone in the fluorescent hallway, hands trembling for the first time in years. He sank onto a bench, elbows on his knees, breath shaking. He didn't know when it had happened, when Maddie Turner became more than a woman he admired from afar. When she became someone he couldn't lose. But as he stared at the red in-surgery light blinking above the doors, Ethan made himself a silent vow. If she survived, if those babies survived, he would protect them with everything he had, even if it meant going to war with Brandon Reeves himself. And he had no idea that war was already coming. Because, at that exact moment, Brandon was stepping into the hospital bringing with him the one secret that could destroy all of them. The operating room was freezing, the kind of cold that sliced through skin and bone, but Madeline Turner felt none of it. She was drifting somewhere between consciousness and darkness, her body fighting a war she no longer had the strength to lead. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. Her vision flickered. Every breath felt borrowed. Voices swirled around her, muffled and frantic. Her pressures tanking start the bolus. Baby A is bradycardic. We don't have time, begin the incision. She wanted to speak, wanted to scream, wanted to demand that someone hold her hand, but the words never reached her lips. The pain was distant now, replaced by a terrifying numbness crawling from her limbs inward. For one horrifying moment, she wondered if her babies could feel her slipping. Then, a sharp cry. Tiny. Desperate. Fighting. Baby A. A nurse lifted a small, slippery body toward the overhead light. He's out. He's breathing weak, but breathing. Madeline didn't hear the rest. Her head rolled to the side, her eyes shut. Baby B wasn't breathing. The room erupted again, louder this time. No pulse start resuscitation. Where's NICU? Move. 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 Mend. The doctors worked with mechanical precision compressions, suction, oxygen mask, each second stretching into an eternity. Sweat dripped down a nurse's temple despite the frigid air. Then another sound. A cough. A whimper. And finally a cry. Baby B had found his voice. The doctor exhaled in relief. We've got him. Both twins to NICU now. Two nurses rushed past with incubators, and even in her fog, Maddie sensed movement, felt the air shift, felt her babies leaving her side before she ever got to see their faces. Her heart clenched, not from pain, but from something deeper, the fear that she would never meet them. The anesthesiologist leaned over her, voice urgent. Stay with us, Madeline. We're almost done. But she was too far gone. Her eyelids lowered. Her pulse wavered. Somewhere beyond the haze, an alarm blared again. More shouting. Scrambling hands. Metal clattering. She's hemorrhaging. We're losing her. Clamp it now. And then, silence. A flat tone. Maddie's world collapsed into black. Outside the OR, Ethan Caldwell was pacing like a caged animal, fingers tangled in his hair, suit wrinkled, eyes bloodshot. Every shout from inside twisted the knife deeper. Doctors floated past with charts. Nurses ran with supplies. He tried reading their expressions, searching for clues, but their faces were masks. A set of double doors burst open. 2 incubators rolled past him, each carrying a tiny baby hooked up to tubes and monitors. Ethan stepped forward on instinct. What are their conditions? He asked. The NICU nurse hesitated. They're fighters. They both made it out. That's all I can say. He exhaled shakily. And their mother? The nurse's expression froze. She's still in surgery. It's critical. Holding. His chest tightened. He had never prayed before, not once in his life, but he prayed now. Prayed that Madeline Turner lived. Prayed that those babies wouldn't grow up motherless. Prayed for a second chance he wasn't sure he deserved. He wasn't expecting company. But then footsteps thundered down the hall. A voice, loud, angry, entitled, shattered the fragile quiet. Where the hell is my wife? Brandon Reeves stormed toward the OR doors. Shirt wrinkled, cologne too strong, the faint smell of alcohol poisoning the sterile air. Ethan's fists clenched instantly. Brandon didn't notice the blood on the floor. He didn't notice the incubators. He didn't even ask if the babies survived. His first words were venom. If she ruins this IPO with her little stunt, I swear to. Ethan stepped directly into his path. You say one more word, he said, voice low and lethal, and I will make sure you regret it for the rest of your life. Brandon froze, stunned not at Ethan's threat, but at something behind him. A doctor had stepped out of the operating room, and her face said everything. Someone wasn't coming out of surgery the way they went in, and her next sentence would destroy one man and change the other forever. The doctor's face was a portrait of exhaustion, eyes rimmed red, mask pulled down just enough to reveal the heaviness in her expression. Ethan Caldwell straightened immediately, heart slamming into his ribs. Brandon Reeves, still reeking of whiskey and arrogance, took one step forward. "Tell me my wife is fine," Brandon demanded, as if ordering a waiter to fix a dinner mistake. The doctor blinked slowly. "Mr. Reeves, Mrs. Turner survived the operation." Ethan closed his eyes in relief. "But," she continued, "she lost a dangerous amount of blood. We had to transfuse twice. Her heart stopped once. She's stable for now, but the next 24 hours are critical." Brandon scoffed. "So she's fine. Good. Where is she?" Ethan's jaw tensed. Even the doctor flinched at Brandon's tone. "She's unconscious," the doctor said. "And she will remain sedated in ICU. She nearly died." Brandon waved a dismissive hand. "She's dramatic. She always—" Ethan moved faster than he thought possible. He grabbed Brandon by the collar and slammed him into the wall so hard the picture frames rattled. Nurses gasped. A guard stepped forward, hesitating only because the scene felt too raw to interrupt. "You weren't here," Ethan growled inches from Brandon's face. "You weren't beside her when she screamed your name. You weren't here when she begged anyone to help your children." Brandon shoved him back. "Don't act like you care. You don't know her. She's my wife." "Then why weren't you here?" Ethan shot back. Brandon opened his mouth, but no excuse came. Not a single believable word. The doctor stepped between them. "Gentlemen, this is a hospital." Brandon huffed, straightened his expensive blazer, and ran a hand through his messy hair. "Just tell me when I can see her." "Not now," the doctor said. "She's not conscious enough to understand anything." Brandon's eyes narrowed. "Whatever. I came. That's enough." "Mun." But for Ethan, it wasn't enough. Not even close. He followed the doctor down the hall toward the ICU wing. Brandon trailed behind, typing something on his phone, too absorbed to care. Through the glass, Maddie looked small. Too small. Pale, fragile, wrapped in wires. Machines beeped in slow rhythm beside her. A ventilator hissed under her soft breathing. Ethan's throat tightened at the sight. She didn't look like the brilliant strategist he debated at conferences. She didn't look like the woman who had rebuilt entire departments at MedExxon. She looked like someone fighting to stay alive. Brandon didn't look at her. Not really. He scanned her body, narrowed his eyes, and muttered, "She better wake up before the IPO announcement. This can't delay anything." Ethan turned so sharply, Brandon actually stepped back. "That's all she is to you? A PR accessory?" Brandon shrugged. "She's pregnant with my kids. That's her job." "Yes." Ethan's voice dropped to something lethal. "You don't deserve them," Brandon sneered. "And what, you think you do? You think showing up one night makes you some kind of hero?" Ethan didn't answer. He didn't have to. Because at that exact moment, a NICU nurse rushed down the corridor, eyes wide. "Mr. Reeves," she called out. "We need to talk about one of the twins." Brandon straightened arrogantly. "Finally. Let's make this quick." The nurse shook her head. "It's baby B. He's taken a turn." Ethan froze. The doctor stiffened. Even Brandon's face twitched. "What do you mean?" Ethan whispered before Brandon could speak. The nurse exhaled shakily. "His oxygen levels are dropping, and we can't stabilize him. We need a parent by his side. Now." Brandon stepped forward. But the nurse blocked him. "I meant a parent," she said carefully. "Someone the baby responds to." Her eyes slid to Ethan. Because baby B's monitors had only stabilized once that night, when Ethan held him. Ethan and Brandon locked eyes. And the war that would destroy one of them finally began. The NICU was colder than the rest of the hospital. The air filled with a soft chorus of beeping monitors and the hushed movements of nurses in pastel scrubs. The walls were painted a calming pale blue. But nothing about the atmosphere felt calm. The urgency was unmistakable. Baby B, Maddie's smallest twin, was struggling. Ethan followed the nurse inside, every muscle in his body tight with dread. Rows of incubators lined the room, each holding a fragile life suspended between hope and uncertainty. When they reached the tiniest one in the corner, Ethan felt his heart cave. The baby lay curled beneath a tangle of tubes, his chest rising and falling with unsteady, shallow breaths. His skin was pale, too pale, and his fists fluttered weakly at his sides as if fighting invisible currents. A neon blue monitor flashed warnings. O2 levels critical. Brandon stepped forward impatiently. All right, let's get this over with. I'm his father. The nurse didn't move. She didn't blink. With respect, Mr. Reeves, she said gently. We tried your voice earlier. The baby didn't respond. Brandon frowned. What does that even mean? It means, the nurse pointed to the screen, every time he hears something familiar or comforting, his vitals change, stabilize. Babies know more than we think. And what? Brandon snapped. You're telling me he wants him? He jabbed a finger toward Ethan. The nurse didn't answer with words. She simply looked at Ethan. And Ethan, speechless, stunned, felt something shift inside him. Brandon scoffed loudly. This is ridiculous. I'm the father. I want 10 minutes alone with him. The nurse's expression hardened, her professional tone dipping into something colder. Mr. Reeves, I'm sorry, but this is about what the baby needs, not what you want. Ethan swallowed, stepping toward the incubator, his voice soft. May I? The nurse nodded. He reached into the small opening on the side of the incubator and gently placed 2 fingers near the baby's tiny hand. The skin was soft paper thin and impossibly warm. For a moment, the baby didn't react. Then, slowly, as if recognizing something, Baby B opened his fist and wrapped his fragile fingers around Ethan's. The monitor beeped. A single steady note. Then another. O2 levels rising. The baby's breathing steadied. His color warmed. His heart rate stabilized. Ethan felt his throat tighten. He blinked fast, swallowing a wave of emotion he wasn't prepared for. Hey, little guy, he whispered shakily. I'm right here. Brandon stared, dumbfounded. This is insane. The nurse whispered, almost reverently. He knows you. He shouldn't, Ethan muttered, voice cracking. We only met once. A few minutes. Lay. The nurse offered a soft, knowing smile. Sometimes babies recognize safety before adults do. Brandon rolled his eyes. Enough. I'm done with this emotional nonsense. My PR team is waiting for updates. He turned to leave, already pulling out his phone. I'll be in the lobby. Ethan didn't look up. Of course you will. The nurse stepped aside, giving Ethan more room. Stay as long as you need. He responds to you better than anyone else. Ethan's voice dropped to a whisper. He shouldn't be alone. Not tonight. He stood there for a long time, hand inside the incubator, the baby clinging to him with surprising strength. The rise and fall of the tiny chest began to synchronize with the rhythm of Ethan's breathing. It felt unreal, impossible that this fragile life seemed to trust him more than the man whose DNA he carried. As minutes passed, Ethan's shoulders softened. The tension in his jaw relaxed. Something inside him, a place he thought long dead, stirred awake. He didn't know what it meant yet. Not for him. Not for Maddie. Not for the lives now tied to his. But he knew this. He would never forget the feeling of that tiny hand holding on to him like he mattered. A nurse approached quietly. Mr. Caldwell, Maddie is waking up. Ethan's heart lurched. He withdrew his hand reluctantly and whispered to the baby, I'll be back, little guy. 1. But when he turned toward the door, Brandon Reeves was already there, leaning against the frame, smiling dangerously. That's enough bonding time, Ethan, he said, because when Maddie wakes up, I'm telling her everything. And the truth Brandon was about to unleash would hit harder than any blow Ethan had ever taken. The ICU lights were dimmed to a soft glow, casting long shadows across the room, where machines hummed like a fragile orchestra. Madeline Turner lay still, her breathing shallow but steady, her skin pale beneath the warm hospital blankets. The tubes and lines around her told the story her lips couldn't yet speak. She had survived. Barely. But she was still here. Ethan Caldwell stood at her bedside, hands in his pockets, trying to steady the rapid, uneven rhythm of his own heartbeat. His tie hung loose around his neck, his once perfect white shirt wrinkled from hours of pacing, but none of that mattered. The only thing he cared about was the slow, fluttering rise of Maddie's chest. Her eyelashes twitched. Ethan stiffened. Maddie? Can you hear me? Her fingers moved first, just a tremor, barely noticeable, then her lips parted with a thin, painful gasp. She struggled to open her eyes, blinking against the blur. When her vision finally settled, she saw him. Not Brandon. Not her family. Not Anursa. Ethan. Her brow creased faintly. Ethan? He stepped closer, voice soft but heavy with relief. Yeah, I'm here. She swallowed with difficulty. The babies, are they? They're alive, Ethan said gently. Both of them. They're fighters, Maddie. A single tear formed at the corner of her eye. She inhaled shakily. I didn't get to see them. You will, Ethan promised. When you're strong enough. Her eyes searched his, confusion settling in as she tried to piece together what happened. How? How long? Hours, Ethan murmured. You scared the hell out of everyone. Before she could respond, the door swung open. Brandon Reeves strode in like a storm-expensive cologne flooding the room, jaw set. A picture of entitlement wrapped in designer arrogance. He stopped just inside, eyes flicking between Maddie and Ethan. Well, Brandon said dryly. Looks like she didn't die after all. Ethan's fists tightened. Watch your mouth. One. But Maddie's voice, fragile but sharp, cut through them both. Brandon, where were you? Silence fell like a guillotine. Brandon blinked, unprepared for the question. I came as soon as… No, she whispered. You weren't there. He straightened defensively. I didn't know it was an emergency. You exaggerate things when you're emotional. Even in her weakened state, Maddie's eyes flashed with pain. Ethan stepped in, unable to stay silent. She almost died, Brandon. And your kids were fighting for their lives. Brandon rolled his eyes. Enough with the dramatics. What matters is I'm here now. Ethan's jaw ticked. You were too late. Brandon ignored him and leaned closer to Maddie. We need to talk about the IPO. This situation is going to create problems if you don't get discharged soon. Ethan's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. She just survived major surgery. You can't be serious. Brandon flashed him a sharp look. Back off, Caldwell. This is a private matter. But Maddie stirred, her strength returning not to her body but to her voice. No, she whispered. Nothing about this is private anymore. Brandon smirked. I'm glad you said that. He leaned in, lowering his tone. Because when you hear what he's been hiding from you… His gaze flicked to Ethan. You'll never look at him the same way again. Ethan stiffened. Maddie blinked weakly. What? Brandon crossed his arms, savoring the moment. You didn't think Ethan showed up out of the goodness of his heart, did you? Tell her, Caldwell. Tell her why you were really there. Tell her the role you played in the one thing she doesn't know about her pregnancy. Ethan froze. Maddie's eyes widened. The room went cold. Brandon smiled slowly because the bomb he was about to drop had the power to destroy the fragile trust forming between Ethan and Maddie in one brutal blow. For a moment, the ICU room held its breath. Even the machines seemed to hush, as if waiting to see whose world would crack first, Ethan's or Maddie's. Brandon Reeves stepped closer to the bed, the smirk never leaving his face. He enjoyed this. He savored it. The cruelty, the power, the way both of them tensed like prey cornered in a trap he built with his own hands. You didn't tell her, did you? Brandon taunted. You didn't tell her why you were so ready to swoop in tonight. Why you've been circling her for months. One. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. Maddie's voice was barely there, rough from the ventilator, but strong enough to shake. Ethan, what is he talking about? Brandon folded his arms triumphantly. Let me enlighten you, sweetheart. He turned toward her with the smug confidence of a man who believed he controlled every ending. Your doctor didn't just call Ethan tonight, Brandon said. Ethan was already involved in your pregnancy before you even knew you were pregnant. No. Maddie blinked, confused and exhausted. The color drained from her face. That doesn't make sense. Oh, it will, Brandon said, because while you thought you were having a routine checkup months ago, someone else made a phone call to your OB. He jabbed a finger toward Ethan. Him. Ethan inhaled sharply. Maddie, it's not… Brandon cut him off with a laugh. Not what? Not the truth? Maddie's breathing sped up. The monitor beeped faster. Ethan? She whispered. Why would you call my doctor? Brandon barreled forward before Ethan could. Because he found out you were pregnant before you told anyone. And he demanded your doctor run additional scans behind your back. Maddie's eyes widened, tears forming. You? What? Ethan shook his head quickly. Maddie, Let me explain. But Brandon was already twisting the knife. You want to know why he did it? His voice dropped to a dark whisper. Because he thought one of the twins might be his. Silence detonated in the room like a bomb. Maddie's mouth parted, but no words came out. Her vision blurred. A sharp ringing filled her ears. She looked from Brandon to Ethan, searching for any sign, any hint that this couldn't be true. But Ethan's expression wasn't denial. It was pain. Brandon grinned like a man who had just won a war. You think he's some noble guardian angel? No. He had his own motives from day one. That's not what happened, Ethan snapped. But there was a tremor in his voice. Maddie swallowed hard. Is any of that true? Ethan hesitated a second too long. And that second broke something. Maddie's eyes glossed with betrayal. Her chest rose and fell too quickly, panic tightening around her like a vice. Get out, she whispered. Ethan stepped closer. Maddie, please. She squeezed her eyes shut. Get out. Brandon leaned against the wall, victorious. Ethan took one more step. But when she turned her face away, he felt something inside him collapse. I never meant to hurt you, he said quietly. The truth is very different from what he's telling you. But I'll give you space. He backed away slowly, each step heavier than the last. Brandon waited until Ethan reached the door. Oh, Caldwell? Brandon called after him. One more thing. Ethan turned. Brandon smirked. You might want to check your email. Because by morning, the entire board of Helix Gene will know exactly where you spent your night and who you've been protecting. Ethan's eyes narrowed. What did you do, Brandon? Brandon winked. Just accelerated your downfall, that's all. And at that exact moment, down the hall, Baby B's monitor began to scream again, this time louder, sharper, more urgent than ever. The alarms from the NICU echoed down the hallway like a siren tearing through the fragile quiet of the ICU. Nurses sprinted past the glass walls, pushing carts of emergency equipment, their voices sharp and urgent. But inside Maddie's room, the world felt slow, foggy, like she was awakening into a nightmare she wasn't prepared to face. Her breathing grew shallow. Her hands trembled. The betrayal still stung like fresh wounds. Brandon stood beside her bed smirking, arms crossed, as if he were watching a show he'd always predicted would end badly. You see, sweetheart, I told you. People like him don't show up without an agenda. Maddie's throat tightened. She didn't want to believe Brandon, she refused to believe him, but Ethan's hesitation replayed in her mind like a bruise she kept pressing. Her voice cracked. Get out. Brandon raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? Maddie forced strength into her words. Get out. He clicked his tongue. Unbelievable. You're lying in a hospital bed because of your weakness, and I'm the one getting thrown out? She glared at him, the anger sharpening her features despite the weakness draining her body. Leave, Brandon. I'm done with your voice. His jaw twitched. For a moment, he looked like he might retaliate, but then something outside caught his attention. A nurse was sprinting toward the ICU wing. We need the NICU crash team. Baby B is critical. The blood drained from Maddie's face. My baby, what happened? Someone tell me what's happening. Brandon barely reacted. Relax. Babies have issues all the time. But Maddie was already trying to sit up, grimacing as pain shot through her abdomen. She clutched the rails of the bed. I want to see him. Take me to him, please. Somebody. A nurse rushed in, placing a firm hand on Maddie's shoulder. Miss Turner, you can't move. You're still recovering from major surgery. Maddie's eyes flooded with tears. He needs me. Lo. The nurse softened. We're doing everything we can. She stepped away, speaking to another nurse. Where's Mr. Caldwell? He was the only one who could stabilize the baby earlier. Brandon barked a humorless laugh. Of course, he ran off. That's what he does. But the nurse shook her head. No, he didn't run off. He went to the NICU the second the alarm started. He's been yelling for help for the last 2 minutes. Maddie froze. Ethan was with her baby? Why would he run toward danger instead of away? Why would he care this much? Before she could process any of it, Brandon's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen, then his expression morphed into something dark. Damn it, Brandon hissed under his breath. Maddie frowned weakly. What is it? Brandon glanced at her, irritation flashing. Nothing you need to worry about. He turned away, stepping toward the hallway. But Maddie saw it. For the first time all night, Brandon looked rattled. "Brandon," she whispered, voice strained. "What happened?" He ignored her. But a nurse rushing past accidentally bumped Brandon's arm. His phone slipped from his hand and clattered onto the floor. The screen lit up long enough for Maddie to see the preview of the incoming email. Subject: Urgent federal investigation into Helix gene. Her breath caught. Federal investigation? Helix gene? Before she could form a question, Brandon snatched the phone off the floor, clenching it so tightly his knuckles whitened. He glared at her, panic leaking through his mask for the first time. "Stay out of this, Madeline." Then he stormed out of the room. Maddie stared at the door long after he disappeared, her pulse racing. Something far bigger than her, Ethan, or even her babies was unfolding, and Brandon was right in the middle of it. A soft voice came from the doorway. "Maddie, you need to come. Now." A nurse stood there, pale, shaken. She swallowed hard. "It's baby B. He's asking for you." Maddie's breath stopped. No machines are working anymore. Nothing is stabilizing him. The nurse's voice cracked. "But when we said your name, his heart rate changed. He's fighting for you." The room spun, and Maddie realized, if she didn't get to her son now, she might never get the chance again. Madeline Turner had never felt more fragile than she did when two nurses gently lifted her from the ICU bed and placed her into a wheelchair. Her incision burned. Her legs trembled. Every breath felt like glass scraping her lungs. But none of it mattered. Her baby needed her. "Please hurry," she whispered, gripping the armrests as the nurses pushed her down the hallway. The corridor blurred around her, sterile walls, distant footsteps, the quiet hum of machines. With every turn, her heart pounded faster, her throat tightening with fear. When they reached the NICU doors, a small crowd of nurses parted to let her through. The air in the room was thick, too thick, like the entire world was holding its breath. Baby B lay in his incubator, tiny chest heaving unevenly, tubes everywhere. His alarms flickered in a rhythm that could break a person's soul. The neon numbers on his monitor were dropping slow, steady, terrifying. Ethan was already there. His hands were braced against the side of the incubator, his head bowed as he whispered something to the baby, words Maddie couldn't hear but felt in her bones. His voice was raw, cracked open. Nothing like the powerful CEO she knew from boardrooms and headlines. He didn't notice she'd arrived until a nurse tapped his shoulder. "Mr. Caldwell. She's here." Ethan turned and Maddie saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. The kind that froze a person from the inside out. "Maddie," he breathed, stepping back so the nurses could wheel her beside the incubator. "He's been fighting. Hard." Maddie reached through the small opening and placed her trembling hand near her son's cheek. Her fingers shook violently, but the moment she touched his skin, something shifted. The baby's fingers twitched. His breathing hitched. The monitor beeped once, twice, steadying just a little. "Oh my God," a nurse whispered. "He knows her." Tears spilled down Maddie's cheeks. "Hi, sweetheart. Mommy's here. I'm right here." The baby's tiny hand curled around her fingertip with surprising strength, and Maddie broke into a quiet sob. "You're so strong, so brave. Please stay with me, I need you." Ethan took a step back, overwhelmed by the rawness of the moment. He'd never seen anything so small fight, so fiercely. He'd never seen a woman look so broken yet so powerful at the same time. He'd never felt more helpless. A doctor approached quietly. "Miss Turner. His oxygen levels are critical. We're doing everything we can, but he responds best to you. Keep talking to him." Maddie lifted her other hand to her mouth, crying softly. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I wasn't here when you came into the world." "You almost died, Maddie," Ethan whispered. "You had no choice." She didn't look at him. She couldn't, not after Brandon's painful words still echoed in her mind. After a moment, she asked without looking up, "Ethan, what is he talking about? Did you really call my doctor?" Ethan froze. Not now. Not while her son fought for breath. Not while the truth could shatter her heart at the worst possible moment. "Maddie," he began carefully, "I promise you, everything I did to protect you." Her tear-filled eyes lifted to his, searching for honesty. Before he could say anything more, chaos erupted. The NICU doors slammed open. Brandon Reeves stumbled inside, breathing hard, phone clutched in his fist. His eyes were wild, panic not for his son, but for something else entirely. "We need to leave," Brandon hissed. "Now." Maddie stared at him. "What are you talking about?" Brandon's voice shook. "The feds are coming for me. Someone tipped them off. We have to get out of here before—" He didn't finish, because a voice echoed from down the hall. "Federal agents." Everyone stepped back from the doorway. "Lun." Brandon's face went white, and as agents swarmed the NICU corridor, Maddie realized her baby wasn't the only life hanging by a thread. The hallway outside the NICU exploded into chaos the moment the agents arrived. Their footsteps thundered against the polished hospital floor, radios crackling, the metallic sound of handcuffs echoing like the final toll of a bell. Nurses froze mid-step. Parents clutched their newborns closer. Even the machines seemed to hold their breaths. Inside the NICU, Madeline Turner stared at her husband, as if seeing him for the first time. Not the polished CEO, not the charismatic founder, not the man she once tried to love, but a criminal. Cornered, terrified, completely exposed, Brandon backed away from the incubators, panic tightening every muscle in his face. "This isn't happening," he muttered. "No, this is a mistake. Someone set me up." He glanced wildly at Ethan, as if searching for someone to blame. "It was you, wasn't it? You fed them information." Ethan didn't flinch. "You did this to yourself." Brandon pointed a shaking finger at him. "You've been waiting years for this moment. You hate that I beat you to market. You hate that I got the patents first." "Enough." A federal agent barked as he stepped inside the NICU, raising his badge. "Brandon Reeves, you are under federal investigation for medical data violations, financial fraud, and obstruction." "No." Brandon shook his head in disbelief. "You can't arrest me here. I'm with my family." The agent's expression didn't change. "Your privilege ended the moment you stole protected health data and sold it." Gasps rippled through the room. Maddie's stomach twisted. She had suspected Brandon was ruthless. She had never imagined he was criminal. Another agent stepped forward. "Mr. Reeves, place your hands where we can see them." Brandon refused. "I'm not leaving. My son is dying, for God's sake." "Mund." But no one missed the irony in his voice. It wasn't concern. It was desperation. He wasn't scared for his son. He was scared for himself. The agents closed in. Brandon panicked. "Maddie, tell them something. You're my wife, help me." Maddie looked at him, her hand still inside Baby B's incubator, her son gripping her finger with all the strength he had left. She finally spoke, voice steady but cold as steel. "I'm not protecting you anymore." Brandon's face contorted. "You ungrateful." But he didn't finish, because Ethan stepped between them, blocking Brandon from getting even a foot closer. His shoulders squared, expression unreadable. Protective in a way Brandon never had been. "She nearly died," Ethan said quietly. "And you left her. You don't get to use her now." Brandon lunged, but 3 agents pinned him before he could reach Ethan. They shoved him against the wall, cuffing him with practiced efficiency. "You can't do this," Brandon shouted. "I built Helix Gene. I built everything. I own—" "You own nothing, Mr. Reeves," the agent said flatly. "Your assets are being frozen as we speak." Brandon's eyes widened in horror. "My— what?" "Everything," the agent replied. "Your accounts, your shares, your properties, all under investigation." Brandon's face went slack, drained of all color. His empire, his image, his power, gone. Forever. The agents began escorting him out. As he passed Maddie's wheelchair, he pleaded suddenly, voice cracking. "Maddie, please, don't let them take everything. Help me." She turned her gaze toward her fragile son, struggling but alive, clinging to her finger. "You already took everything from me," she whispered. "Now you're just getting what you deserve." Brandon's mouth fell open. He tried one last time. "I'll lose everything." Ethan answered instead, voice quiet but lethal. "That's the point. Mun." The agents dragged Brandon out of the NICU, his shouts echoing down the hall until they vanished into silence. Maddie exhaled shakily, tears slipping down her cheeks, not grief, not fear, but something closer to release. But before she could process any of it, a doctor rushed toward them, dread written across her face. "Miss Turner, Baby B's oxygen is dropping again. We might need to make a decision." Maddie's breath stopped. A decision? What kind of decision? She whispered. The doctor swallowed. The kind no mother ever wants to face. And Maddie realized her fight wasn't over. Her darkest moment was only beginning. The words struck Madeline Turner like a physical blow. A decision. Her breath caught, her vision blurring around the edges. She tightened her hold inside the incubator, her fingertips still locked in the desperate grip of her struggling baby. His tiny chest rose and fell in painful stutters, each breath sounding more fragile than the last. What kind of decision? She whispered, though her voice barely held together. The doctor knelt beside her wheelchair, her expression soft but devastated. Baby B's lungs. They're severely underdeveloped. We've maxed out oxygen support. He isn't responding to the ventilation the way we hoped. Maddie shook her head immediately. No, he's been fighting. He held my hand. He responded to me. He's still fighting. He is, the doctor agreed gently. And that's exactly why we need to talk. He can't keep fighting like this. His body is wearing down. A sob escaped Maddie's lips. What are you saying? Ethan stepped closer, hands on the back of her wheelchair, grounding her as her world tilted. The doctor took a breath. We need to decide whether to perform a high-risk lung intervention. It could save him, or it could cause a collapse. Maddie's stomach twisted violently. And the alternative? Ethan asked quietly. The doctor hesitated. We continue support. But it may not be enough. Maddie shook her head, tears streaming. No, I won't lose him. I can't. The doctor placed a gentle hand over Maddie's trembling one. This isn't a choice between hope and hopelessness. It's a choice between two kinds of hope. One is safer, but may not work. One is risky, but could give him the life he deserves. Maddie looked at her son, the smallest twin, the fighter whose fingers refused to let go of hers. His breaths came in fragile bursts, but his tiny face looked determined, as if he understood the battle he'd been thrown into. She leaned closer. Baby, Mommy's right here. I'm not going anywhere. His grip tightened. Even Ethan felt his chest constrict at the sight. The doctor continued softly. Miss Turner, we need your decision now. Maddie's mind raced. She thought of how she'd nearly died giving birth to him. How she'd woken to a world falling apart. How Brandon had abandoned them. How Ethan had stepped in when no one else had. She thought of everything this tiny boy had already survived. Her voice cracked. If we do the procedure, will he be in pain? No, the doctor said immediately. He'll be sedated. And we use the gentlest techniques available, but his body is extremely fragile. And if it works? Maddie whispered. Then he has a real chance, the doctor answered. Ethan crouched beside her, his voice steady. Maddie, whatever you choose, I'm right here. I'll stand with you through every second of it. She turned to him, tears shimmering in her eyes. I don't know what the right choice is. There is no right or wrong, Ethan said. There's only what your heart can live with. Maddie looked back at her son. His heartbeat flickered across the monitor, irregular, desperate, but refusing to quit. She pressed her forehead to the incubator, whispering through her tears. You fought this hard. I won't give up on you now. She lifted her head, jaw trembling but resolute. Do the procedure, she said. Give him a chance. The doctor nodded and stood quickly. Prep the OR. We move now. Nurses hurried into motion, disconnecting lines, gathering equipment. Maddie reached into the incubator one last time. Mommy loves you, she whispered. Come back to me, please. As they wheeled the tiny incubator toward the surgical doors, Ethan placed a hand on Maddie's shoulder, steadying her shaking body. He's strong, he murmured. Just like his mother. But before Maddie could answer, a different doctor rushed into the NICU breathless, holding a thick envelope. Miss Turner, there's something you need to see. It's about your husband. And your company. Maddie blinked, exhausted. Now? Why now? The doctor swallowed. Because Brandon wasn't just hiding financial crimes. He was hiding something about you. The envelope trembled in her hands. And inside it was a truth that would change everything Maddie thought she knew about her own life. The NICU lights glowed softly, but nothing about the moment felt gentle. Madeline Turner stared at the envelope trembling in the doctor's hands, her pulse thudding painfully beneath her ribs. She had barely processed the terror of sending her tiny son into emergency surgery. Part of her heart was still rolling down the hallway with the incubator. And yet here she was forced to face another blow. "Miss Turner," the doctor said carefully, "we discovered this in the file your husband tried to seal. It concerns your medical records and legal documents he submitted months ago." Ethan stepped closer instinctively, placing a steadying hand on the back of her wheelchair. His presence anchored her, but her mind spun in a storm of dread. "Open it," Maddie whispered. The doctor carefully slid out the paper's thick, official-looking sheets stamped with logos from Helix Gene's legal department. She handed the first page to Maddie. Maddie's hands shook so badly she could barely read the header. "Request for spousal medical authorization, overriding patient consent." Her stomach hollowed. "What? What is this?" Ethan stiffened. "Authorization? For what?" The doctor swallowed. "Your husband filed a request granting himself full control over your medical decisions without your signature." Maddie felt the blood drain from her face. "That's illegal." "Yes," the doctor said, "and it gets worse." She handed Maddie the second paper. A prenatal report. The date made her breath catch. 2 months before she learned she was pregnant. "What is this?" Maddie whispered, scanning the lines. "I didn't have any tests done then." The doctor nodded grimly. "No, you didn't. But Brandon did." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Explain." "Your husband ordered a full panel of fertility and pregnancy-related tests on your samples without your knowledge." The doctor hesitated. "He requested them under his corporate medical clearance." Maddie's heart pounded. "He knew before I knew, and he didn't tell you," the doctor said. "He kept it for himself. That's why he pressured you. That's why he tried to control your care." Ethan exhaled sharply. "He used her medical information as leverage." The doctor nodded. "There's more." She handed over the last sheet, a legal amendment Brandon had hidden. Maddie read the title and nearly choked. "Petition for preliminary custody rights in the event of maternal medical instability." Her blood froze. He planned for this. He planned for her to be removed. Her voice cracked. "He filed this while I was healthy. Before the pregnancy was even viable?" The doctor nodded. "Yes. And the petition shows intent to designate himself as sole guardian automatically if you were ever hospitalized longer than 72 hours due to complications." Maddie pressed a hand to her mouth. "He wanted to take my children," she whispered, "even before they existed." Ethan crouched beside her, eyes burning with fury and empathy. "He tried to erase you, Maddie. Legally, financially, personally." Her entire body trembled. She felt sick, violated, betrayed in a way deeper than infidelity. The doctor placed a final note on her lap, an email screenshot. "This was attached," she said softly. "You need to read it." Maddie blinked through tears and stared at the printed email. From Brandon Reeves to Helix Gene Legal Team. Subject: Finalize rights transfer. One line was highlighted. "Once the twins are born, accelerate the fitness petition. I want her rights terminated before she recovers." Maddie's heartbeat shattered. He planned to declare her unfit. He planned to take her babies. He planned to erase her entirely. Ethan's fists shook with barely contained rage. "He's worse than we thought." The doctor gently touched Maddie's arm. "I'm so sorry you had to see this today, but you needed to know the full extent of the danger." Maddie wiped her tears, breath trembling but eyes hardening with the beginnings of fire. "I won't let him touch my children. Not now. Not ever." Ethan nodded. "We'll fight him. Legally. Publicly. Whatever it takes." But before Maddie could respond, the NICU doors burst open. A surgeon rushed toward them, still wearing gloves, her mask spattered from the procedure. "Miss Turner, your son," she said breathlessly. Maddie's heart stopped. The surgeon's eyes softened with something heavy. "We need you in the OR waiting room." There were complications, and the decision she made to save her baby was about to cost her more than she ever imagined. The OR waiting room felt too bright, too white, too hollow. Every surface seemed to echo the same sound, the ticking of a wall clock that refused to move fast enough. Nurses moved in and out, murmuring updates Maddie could barely process. She clutched the blanket draped over her shoulders, her fingers trembling, every breath uneven. Her baby, her tiny, fragile fighter, was somewhere behind closed doors, battling for a life he had barely begun. Ethan sat beside her, elbows resting on his knees, hands clasped so tightly the knuckles were white. He'd never felt so helpless, not in boardrooms, not in corporate wars, not in billion-dollar negotiations. This was different. This was a kind of pain that no amount of power could shield him from. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like a lifetime. Maddie couldn't stop replaying the last time she saw her son barely larger than her hand, his chest fluttering like a candle struggling against the wind. She could still feel the warmth of his tiny fingers wrapped around hers. She could still hear the strained beeping of his monitor. And now, silence. She pressed a shaking palm to her mouth. He's so small, Ethan. What if his body can't take it? Ethan turned to her, voice steady but thick with feeling. He's stronger than he looks. He's already survived more than most adults do in a lifetime. And he has you. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. I didn't even get to hold him. You will, Ethan said softly. I promise. She swallowed hard. Don't promise things you can't control. Ethan looked down, pain pulling at the edges of his expression. Then I'll say this. You're not alone. Not for one more minute. Maddie's chest tightened at the sincerity in his voice. It hurt because she wanted to trust him. But Brandon's earlier accusations still echoed in the corners of her mind. Before she could respond, heavy footsteps approached. A surgeon in scrubs stepped into the room, her mask pulled down, her eyes solemn. Maddie felt her world tilt. Please just tell me he's alive. He is, the surgeon said quickly. Maddie collapsed into a shaky exhale, hand over her heart. But, the surgeon continued, there were complications. The lung intervention was more difficult than anticipated. His oxygen saturation dropped dangerously low twice. Maddie gripped the arms of her wheelchair. Is he stable now? He is, the surgeon said. But barely. We were able to repair the microtear, and he's responding better to ventilation. But he's not out of danger. Maddie nodded rapidly, tears streaming. Can I see him? Yes, the surgeon said gently. But we need to prepare you. He's intubated. He'll look very fragile. Some mothers find it overwhelming. I don't care how he looks, Maddie whispered. He's my son. The surgeon nodded and stepped back. We'll take you to him in a moment. As she left, Maddie leaned back, covering her face with both hands as the weight of it all came crashing down. Ethan touched her shoulder gently. You did the right thing. You gave him a chance. Habru. Maddie lowered her hands, eyes swollen but fierce. Ethan. About what Brandon said. Ethan stiffened. Maddie, whatever he told you, I need the truth, she said quietly. Before I see my son again, before anything else moves forward. Ethan inhaled sharply. This was it. The moment he'd been dreading. The moment everything could shatter. He opened his mouth to speak. But the NICU doors slammed open. A nurse stood there, breathless. Miss Turner, there's something you need to see immediately. It's about your baby. And someone who's trying to get access to him. Maddie's heart stopped. Who? The nurse hesitated, eyes nervous. Your husband's lawyer. And he wasn't alone. The hallway outside the NICU felt colder than before, colder than the operating rooms, colder than the ICU, colder even than the night Maddie realized her marriage was dying. She tightened her grip on the armrests of her wheelchair, her pulse thundering in her ears as the nurse guided her toward a cluster of people gathered near the secured NICU entrance. Ethan walked beside her with long, purposeful strides, his expression a dark storm. Who's here? What are they doing near the NICU? The nurse swallowed. Security stopped them at the door. They said they're here for the twins. Maddie's heart squeezed painfully. They can't be. Brandon was arrested. And the nurse looked even more uneasy. That's why they're here. As they rounded the corner, Maddie's breath caught. Standing just outside the NICU doors were 2 hospital security officers and 3 people in tailored suits. At the center was a tall, silver-haired man with a cold, hawk-like stare. Brandon's attorney, Richard Mallory, one of the most aggressive family law lawyers in Manhattan. He clutched a set of documents like a weapon. Beside him stood a woman with a clipboard, Child Protective Services. Maddie's blood went ice cold. Ethan stepped in front of her instinctively. What the hell is this? Richard Mallory lifted his chin. We're here to carry out an emergency guardianship petition filed earlier tonight. The words sliced into Maddie's chest. Her voice shook. Filed by who? Mallory adjusted his tie. By your husband, Brandon Reeves. He's in federal custody. Ethan snapped. He filed it before his arrest, Mallory replied calmly. And according to state law, if a mother is medically incapacitated, the father may request temporary authority. She's not incapacitated, Ethan barked. But Mallory continued as if he hadn't spoken. And if both parents are deemed temporarily unable to care for the infant, the state may assign a third-party guardian until further review. Maddie's breath left her. No, you can't be serious. My baby just came out of surgery. I need to be with him. The CPS worker stepped forward. Miss Turner, we're only here to verify the situation. We haven't authorized anything yet. Ethan stepped closer, his voice calm but lethal. These babies are not leaving this hospital with anyone. Especially not with a petition Brandon forged in desperation. Mallory's lips curled. You have no legal standing, Mr. Caldwell. Oh, I will, Ethan said. Give me 10 minutes and a phone. Maddie could barely breathe. Please, don't take my baby. He's barely holding on. The CPS worker, a woman with kind eyes, looked conflicted. Miss Turner, we haven't made a determination yet, but there are documents we must review. Maddie's chest constricted. These were the very documents she'd seen in the envelope earlier, the ones proving Brandon had tried to strip her of parental rights before she even knew she was pregnant. Her voice cracked. He forged paperwork. He tried to erase me. He planned this. Mallory's expression remained stone cold. Allegations without proof. Ethan stepped forward. She has proof. Every head turned. Ethan continued, voice steady. She has Brandon's sealed petition, the illegal medical authorizations, the email where he told his lawyers to terminate her rights. A flicker of shock crossed the CPS worker's face. Do you have copies? We have originals, Ethan said. And they're time-stamped. Mallory's mask finally twitched. Before he could speak, Ethan pulled out his phone. I'm calling Nora Whitfield, federal health compliance attorney. She's on her way here with evidence. Mallory stiffened. That won't change. Oh, it absolutely will, Ethan cut in. Because you filed a fraudulent petition based on illegal documents. And the moment Nora walks through that door, this entire ambush blows up in your face. The CPS worker glanced uneasily between them. If that's true, we need to review everything before proceeding. Mallory's jaw clenched. This hospital will be sued. No, Ethan said, stepping in front of Maddie. You're done threatening people who can't fight back. At that moment, the elevator dinged. Everyone turned. Stepping out, heels clicking, briefcase in hand, was Nora Whitfield herself, her expression sharp enough to cut steel. She nodded once at Ethan, then turned to Mallory. Mr. Mallory, she said, I suggest you stop talking. She held up a thick folder. Because I have everything I need to end your petition. Mallory's face turned white. Nora stepped forward. But that's not all, she added. There's something else you all need to see. Something about Brandon and the twins' birth certificate. Maddie's heart stuttered. Birth certificate? Nora looked at Maddie gently. Madeline, Brandon wasn't the only one who filed something tonight. One. And the truth she revealed next would blow the entire custody battle wide open. The hallway outside the NICU held its breath, as if every light, every machine, every inch of cold linoleum waited for Nora Whitfield's next words. Maddie felt her pulse in her throat, her fingertips, her chest everywhere at once. Ethan stepped closer, voice low. Nora, what did you find? Nora opened the folder slowly, her expression grave but calm. Madeline, before I show you this, I want you to understand something clearly. None of this is your fault. Maddie's heart squeezed. Just tell me. Nora handed her a document, official, stamped, newly printed. Maddie blinked at the title. Certificate of Live Birth, Twin A and Twin B. Her breath caught. They already issued it? She hadn't even held them yet. But then her eyes moved lower, to the line labeled Father. And she froze, because the space wasn't blank. And it didn't say Brandon Reeves. It said, Undetermined pending DNA verification. Maddie's voice broke. What? What does that mean? Mallory stepped forward aggressively. This is outrageous. There's no reason for this designation. Brandon is the legal father. No, he isn't, Nora said evenly. Not when Brandon filed for sole custody using medical documents he obtained illegally. Not when he manipulated prenatal records. Not when he interfered with patient privacy laws. All of that invalidated the automatic paternal assignment. Ethan blinked. Meaning? Meaning, Nora said. The state flagged the paternity as disputed. Maddie's stomach twisted. Disputed? By who? Nora held her gaze. By Brandon himself. The floor seemed to fall away beneath Maddie. Her hands shook uncontrollably. He denied them? He filed something saying they might not be his? Nora nodded once. His emergency custody petition included a contradictory claim stating possible non-paternity concerns, likely to strengthen his case to remove you as a guardian. Maddie felt sick. He tried to erase me and disown them? Ethan's face darkened with a fury Maddie had never seen in him before. That man doesn't deserve to breathe the same air as them. Mallory sputtered. This is all taken out of context. Oh, there's context, Nora snapped, pulling out another paper. This is a DNA test request Brandon submitted to a private lab last week. He tried to run paternity without your consent, and he flagged Ethan Caldwell as a possible genetic contributor. Silence hit like a bomb. Maddie stared at Ethan, breath trembling. Is that what Brandon meant? Is that why he said you thought one baby might be yours? Ethan swallowed hard. Maddie, I never suspected that. Brandon was twisting something else entirely. What else? She whispered, voice cracking. Ethan took a breath, the truth weighing heavy on his shoulders. Your doctor called me months ago, not because of paternity. Because she was worried about you. You fainted in her office appointment. Twice. And Brandon told her not to bother him with it. She knew I cared. She asked me to convince you to get proper scans. Maddie blinked as tears filled her eyes. That's it, Ethan said softly. That's the whole story. Mallory scoffed. Convenient. Nora turned to him. You can stop now. The state has everything they need to suspend Brandon's parental rights. Indefinitely. Maddie gasped. Suspend? His rights? Yes. Nora said. Effective immediately. He forged documents, manipulated medical records, filed contradictory petitions, and tried to remove you as a guardian preemptively. She placed a supportive hand on Maddie's shoulder. The twins are safe from him now. 1. Relief crashed over Maddie so suddenly she couldn't speak. But the moment was short-lived, because the NICU doors burst open again. A nurse hurried toward them, face pale, voice shaking. Miss Turner, your son is awake. He's crying, but he's stabilizing. The nurse smiled through tears. He's responding. He's fighting. Maddie covered her mouth, sobbing with relief. But then the nurse's expression shifted, alarming, urgent. But there's someone else you need to know about. Someone who just arrived downstairs asking to see both you and the babies. Maddie blinked. Who? The nurse hesitated. A woman. She says her name is Chloe Drayton. And she claims she has information that will destroy Brandon's entire empire and save your children's future. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, but the woman who stepped out made the entire hospital lobby stiffen. Chloe Drayton, flawless, in a fitted black coat, hair pulled into a sleek bun, eyes sharp as glass, didn't look like a mistress. She looked like a weapon aimed directly at the man who once thought he owned her. Nora Whitfield stood beside Maddie's wheelchair as she, Ethan, and 2 nurses approached the lobby. The distant hum of hospital machines faded behind them, replaced by the cold tension vibrating in the air. Chloe turned slowly when she noticed them. Her gaze softened surprisingly when it landed on Maddie. Maddie Turner, she said quietly. You look stronger than he ever wanted you to be. Maddie swallowed, unsure how to respond. What are you doing here? Chloe took a measured breath. Ending him. Ethan stepped forward protectively. You need to be very clear about what that means. Chloe nodded, pulling a small folder from her purse. I have everything, the emails, the financial transfers, even recordings. Brandon didn't just break the law. He built his entire empire on stolen data, illegal trials, and patient exploitation. Nora raised an eyebrow. And why would you help us now? Chloe's lips curved into something sharp. Because he thought he owned me too. The lobby fell silent. Chloe continued, voice steady but tinged with bitterness. He promised me promotions, money, a future at the company. Then last month, he tried to blame the data breach on me. Said if the feds poked around, he'd make sure they found something with my name on it. Maddie's stomach twisted. He would have ruined your life. Chloe let out a humorless laugh. Oh, he did worse than try. He actually filed a report saying I stole proprietary patient files. Her smile faded. But what he forgot is that I never delete anything. She handed the folder to Nora, who opened it, eyes widening at each page. These are federal crimes, Nora whispered. This isn't just fraud. These are charges that could put him away for decades. Ethan crossed his arms. Why come to Maddie? You could have taken this to the authorities directly. Chloe looked at Maddie with something almost like shame. Because I owe her the truth. And because this isn't just about Helix Gene. It's about the twins. Maddie's breath trembled. What about my babies? Chloe hesitated. Brandon planned to relocate. Out of state. Maybe out of the country. I don't know the details. He kept his files locked, but he kept repeating something like, the less she's involved, the cleaner the story. Maddie turned pale. He was going to take them. Yes, Chloe said softly. And you needed to know before the court hearings begin. Ethan's jaw tensed, voice low with rage. He's not taking anything from her ever again. Chloe nodded. Exactly. That's why I'm here. She stepped closer to Maddie, her voice losing its edge. You don't know me. You shouldn't trust me. But I'm sorry, truly. I didn't realize how deep his manipulation went. Maddie blinked, absorbing the words. I appreciate you coming forward. But Chloe wasn't finished. There's one more thing, she said slowly, something that's not in that folder. Nora placed the documents under her arm. What is it? Chloe's shoulders stiffened. Brandon wasn't acting alone. Silence descended again. Maddie felt the ground tilt beneath her. What do you mean, not alone? Chloe lowered her voice. There's someone else. Someone who helped him forge the documents. Someone who benefits if Brandon loses everything. Ethan stepped closer. Who? Chloe hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Helix Gene has a silent partner, she finally said. A partner who funded the sketchiest parts of Brandon's work. Someone powerful. Someone with influence over courts, hospitals, and even legal filings. Nora's eyes narrowed. Do you have a name? Chloe nodded slowly. Yes. And if I'm right, this person isn't finished. They're coming after custody next. Maddie's blood ran cold. Who is it, Chloe? Chloe's voice dropped to a whisper. Brandon's mother. Madeline Turner had endured betrayal from the man she married, nearly lost her life bringing her twins into the world, and fought through the fear of losing one of them in surgery. She thought she had finally reached the end of the nightmare. She was wrong. When Chloe's final words settled in the lobby air, Brandon's mother, Maddie, felt something inside her collapse and harden at the same time. Margaret Reeves. A woman with more political connections than most senators. A woman who treated her son like a future king and everyone else like peasants. A woman who never hid her disdain for Maddie's middle-class upbringing. Ethan leaned closer, voice low. Chloe, are you absolutely sure? Chloe nodded grimly. The money trail leads back to a private trust in her name. Helix Gene's shadow funding, the off-the-books doctors Brandon used, the lawyers who drafted those forged petitions, they were all paid through her accounts. Nora exhaled sharply. That explains how everything moved so quickly. Brandon alone couldn't manipulate hospital records, family court filings, and financial transfers that fast. Maddie swallowed. She's known. This whole time? Chloe's eyes softened. She didn't just know. She planned it. A shiver crawled up Maddie's spine. Before she could speak, the elevator dinged again. Every head turned. And there she was. Margaret Reeves walked out of the elevator like she owned the hospital. Immaculate pearl button coat. Diamond earrings. Hair pinned in a perfect twist. The kind of woman who could destroy reputations over brunch and still be home in time for tea. She didn't look at anyone, not the nurses, not the guards, not even Nora. Her eyes locked straight onto Maddie. Her heels clicked sharply as she approached. Each step a declaration. Madeline, Margaret said coolly, stopping a few feet away. I heard about the baby's surgery. I came at once. Ethan stepped forward, blocking her path. You're not getting anywhere near them. Margaret raised an eyebrow. Mr. Caldwell, you mistake me for someone who needs your permission. Nora moved beside Ethan. Mrs. Reeves, this is an active federal investigation. You should not be here. Margaret's smile was cold and practiced. Please, Nora. I've known you since you passed the bar. Spare me the lecture. Then she turned back to Maddie. Her expression sharpened. My son is innocent. Maddie let out a broken laugh. He forged documents to steal my babies. Margaret's eyes flashed. He did what was necessary. Ethan's voice darkened. Necessary. He nearly killed her. Margaret didn't blink. Collateral damage. Silence punched through the lobby. Even Chloe stepped back. Nora's jaw tightened. Mrs. Reeves, you need to leave before you interfere with. Margaret cut her off. Enough. You all seem to be under the impression that this little tantrum of yours will amount to anything. She reached into her designer bag and pulled out a crisp envelope. Recognition hit Maddie like cold water. A custody petition. Margaret lifted her chin. I am filing for emergency guardianship of the twins. Maddie's breath stumbled. You can't. You have no grounds. Margaret's smile returned cold, cruel, triumphant. Oh, but I do. My son is indisposed. You, she said, her gaze sweeping over Maddie's weakened body, are medically unfit and emotionally unstable, and the state already marked the paternal line as undetermined. She tapped the envelope. Which means the court will lean toward the only stable, established party left. Ethan stepped forward, fury radiating from him. Over my dead body. Margaret ignored him completely. You almost died, Madeline, she said softly. And the state will not gamble 2 newborn lives on a mother who can barely sit upright. Maddie felt the room sway. Not from weakness, from rage. She gripped the wheelchair arm so hard her knuckles whitened. You won't take my children. Oh, I already have, Margaret whispered. This petition was pre-filed. By morning, it becomes active. Chloe gasped. You witch? But Margaret raised a hand, silencing her. This is the price, she said calmly, for thinking you could ever belong in our world. Ethan moved like he was ready to tear the whole lobby apart. But before he reached her, a nurse burst through the NICU doors, breathless and frantic. Miss Turner, baby B is fully awake. He's crying for you. His numbers are rising on every monitor. The doctors say it's a miracle. Maddie's breath hitched. Margaret's mask cracked. But the nurse wasn't finished. And the DNA markers from the surgery, she added. There's been a discovery. Everyone froze. The nurse swallowed hard and looked directly at Maddie. The lab results show Brandon isn't a match for baby B. The father is someone else. The lobby fell silent. No footsteps. No whispers. No machines humming in the distance. Only the nurse's trembling voice hung in the air. Brandon isn't a match for baby B. The father is someone else. Maddie felt the world tilt. A sharp gasp escaped her lips, her pulse hammering against her ribs. For a moment, her mind could not catch up with the words. Not Brandon. Not the man who tried to erase her. Not the man who forged documents. Not the man who abandoned their newborns. But then she saw Ethan. He wasn't shocked. He wasn't confused. He looked devastated and deeply afraid. Ethan, Maddie whispered, her voice breaking. Why aren't you surprised? Ethan inhaled slowly, the truth squeezing the breath from his chest. He stepped forward, eyes shining with something raw and unguarded. Maddie, because I knew there was a chance. The room spun. A chance? How could you? Why didn't you tell me? Margaret stepped in sharply, voice icy. This is absurd. My son is their father. I refuse to believe otherwise. Nora cut her off. Mrs. Reeves, the NICU's genetic verification is definitive. Baby B carries markers Brandon does not possess. Margaret's face blanched. Ethan approached Maddie, his voice trembling but honest. Months before you even knew you were pregnant. We were at the charity gala in Manhattan. You'd fought with Brandon. You were crying behind the terrace near the fountains. You told me. You felt invisible. Maddie swallowed. I remember. You left early, Ethan said softly. But not before you asked me to walk you to your car. You hugged me. And for a moment We crossed a line I shouldn't have. A line I've regretted and cherished at the same time. A tear rolled down his cheek. I never told you because you were married. Because you chose him. Because I didn't want to become another source of pain in your life. Maddie covered her mouth, trembling. Chloe stood frozen. Nora blinked. The CPS worker took a step back in shock. Even the security guard swallowed hard. And Margaret Reeves finally lost her composure. This is nonsense, she snapped. Fabricated. You seduced her, you manipulated her. Ethan turned on her, voice sharp as a blade. Your son abused her, neglected her, and tried to steal her children. I was the one who helped her when she fainted at appointments you told doctors to ignore. Margaret's face twisted. You ruin everything you touch. No, Ethan said firmly. Your son did that. Nora stepped forward. For the record, the discovery that Brandon is not baby B's biological father nullifies all petitions he filed for guardianship. Margaret swayed. No, this can't. And, Nora added, DNA markers confirm that the father is Ethan Caldwell. Which means, Margaret, you have zero legal standing over that child. Margaret stumbled back as if struck. Maddie let out a choked sob, not of fear, but of release. Her baby wasn't tied to Brandon. Her future wasn't tied to him. And the person who had held the baby comforted him, stabilized him. It made sense now. The connection, the instinct, the way baby B responded only to Ethan. Maddie's tears fell freely. Ethan, why didn't you tell me sooner? Because you were fighting for your life, he whispered. Because your world was collapsing. And because I never wanted the truth to feel like another burden. She reached out a trembling hand. Ethan dropped to his knees beside her wheelchair and took it gently. I didn't expect anything, he said. I didn't come to replace him. I came because I love you. Her breath hitched. He continued, voice breaking. I fell in love with you long before that night. And when I realized baby B might be mine, I didn't want to claim him. I just wanted him to live. Wanted you to live. The entire lobby felt suspended in time. Maddie squeezed his hand. You saved him. You saved me. You saved us. Ethan bowed his head against her knee, overwhelmed. Behind them, Margaret's phone buzzed sharply, an alert from her attorney. She looked down, and her face drained of all remaining color. Chloe stepped forward. What's that? Margaret whispered. Helix Gene. The company. It's gone. The feds froze it. All of it. Her hands shook. My legacy, everything. Ruined. And Maddie finally looked up at her mother-in-law, no longer afraid, no longer small. You destroyed yourself, Maddie said quietly. No one else. Damn. Before Margaret could respond, the NICU nurse rushed toward them once more. Miss Turner, she called out, breathless and smiling through tears. Your baby, he's breathing on his own. Maddie sobbed. Ethan rose and wrapped an arm around her shoulders as the nurse reached them. You can hold him now, the nurse whispered. And for the first time since everything began, Maddie felt the world shift toward hope, not fear. So, that's where our story comes to a close. And if you are still here with me, right now, after everything, then something in this journey touched your heart in a quiet, honest way. Maybe it reminded you that life can break us, but it can also rebuild us in ways we never expected. You know, the Stoics used to say, the obstacle is the way. And that's exactly what Madeline's story shows us. Sometimes the pain we fear the most becomes the doorway to the future we deserve. Sometimes losing the wrong people frees us for the right ones. And sometimes we discover our true strength at the very moment life tries to undo us. Remember what Marcus Aurelius said. You have power over your mind, not outside events. We can't control betrayal, heartbreak, or the storms others bring into our lives. But we can control how we rise after them. If this story made you feel seen, understood, or simply reminded you of your own strength, then don't leave without showing a little love. Like this video, share it with someone who needs it today, and hit that subscribe button so you can stay with us for the next journey. You're not alone, and you're stronger than you think.